You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Successful Screenwriter Podcast, where we discuss anything and everything screenwriting. Here we interview successful screenwriters and filmmakers to find out just what it takes to make it in the industry. Real quick, this episode is sponsored by Arc Studio. I am so excited by this because I really like this software. I use it myself. Arc Studio is used by beginners and even pros like the team behind the Netflix original show Arcane and David Wayne, writer-director of Role Models. What I like about Arc Studio, it's easy to use, solid, and covers the whole flow, from structure, writing, rewriting, and most importantly, collaborating with other writers. Arc Studio has a free plan, so definitely check that out. And they are giving $30 off their paid plans for our listeners. That is amazing. Make sure to check out the link in our show notes and take advantage of that exclusive discount. Now, on to the show. All right, welcome to the podcast. We have on a great guest today. This is the creator of the Listening In podcast. She's also a director of an upcoming film called Jane, which will have its theatrical release. This is Sabrina Jaglom. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm actually listening to the show, and I really like this show. You grabbed me with it, so I was like, man, I can get to have him on here. We can talk about it.
Well, that's what I like to hear.
So it stars Rachel Brosnahan, which she's an incredible talent. She comes on as a producer as well, or?
Yes, she does. So she is an executive producer on the show, and then her company, Scrap Paper Pictures, are also producing it alongside Automatic, with QCode financing it and distributing it.
Wow. All right. So just walk me through kind of your origin story, because I know you've produced some movies. You produced a movie with Reese Witherspoon. So if you can just kind of like walk me through your path of how you got here.
Sure. It's a slightly meandering path, but essentially, I mean, I've always wanted to direct since I was, 5. I think a lot of people have these great moments where they knew they wanted to direct, and that was, unfortunately, I don't have that. I just grew up in a very artistic household, and we made short films, and I directed theater and all this weird stuff from a young age. So I've just been pursuing it for a very long time, and I went to film school in New York at NYU, and when I graduated, I worked for a bunch of different directors on a bunch of different sets for a while. And one of them was I worked for Nancy Meyers on The Intern. And then, fast forwarding, I actually moved back to LA and was working in development for a while because I really wanted to learn all the different sides of the film industry.
Smart.
I just felt like if I want to direct, you have to learn how things actually get made to the point where you're able to direct, not just the onset stuff. And so it was a great experience. I read a ton of scripts and books and talked about story, which I recommend to everyone who's an aspiring writer or director. And then when I left that job to focus on writing and directing, I ended up reaching back out to Nancy, and she was producing Home Again, which her daughter Hallie Meyershire was directing. So I came on to work under Nancy on that film.
Wow.
And that was, I guess now, 5 or 6 years ago at this point. And since then, I've just been writing and directing. And one of the projects that I had an idea for, and I was listening in, and we finally have it all ready to go.
So did this start as a potential film idea or show and then morph into the audio drama?
It actually didn't. It's a rare occasion of an idea that was conceived as an audio drama, a podcast, a radio play, whatever people call it. Because I think a lot of people do have ideas for film, TV, and then they reverse engineer it because it's a way for you to control the IP, put something out there. This is a little different. I had been speaking with the TV team at Automatic just generally about projects and stuff, and they were saying that they were looking for ideas to partner with QCode on for their podcast division, because they're like sister companies. And I just started thinking about a way into that world, and something that can fit well in the audio drama medium. And I'd listened to a few of their narrative shows, and that's kind of how I just came up with this idea.
I think it's a great idea. And it does feel like it fits into that audio drama world quite naturally, because you can kind of notice when someone has developed an IP for a different medium and they're adapting it into the podcast. This really feels like it's made for it, because it has that what is the term for it? The soundscape. It has, you feel like you're there, and I love that.
Thank you. Well, QCode's, they're great. Their quality is impeccable at doing that. I've listened to a lot of different, audio dramas, especially, before I even started writing, and they really have a way of making it feel very immersive. But for my part, I didn't want there to be a narrator. I didn't want it to feel like a hosted kind of talk show in any way. And so I kind of, I was like, okay, great. If we're with a character, we'll hear what she hears, we'll experience what she experiences. And it's definitely a challenge. I'm a very visual person, and we're all used to writing, for what you see. It's a challenge, but having the device where she is literally listening in to other people's conversations helped, I think, make it feel like it fit in this medium, and wasn't just we're trying to fit, a square peg in a round hole.
No, I think the concept of having like a Siri or an Alexa that's gone glitchy, and she's listening into her neighbors and picking up some kind of a weird mystery, and then building into her husband and the company. It almost kind of gave me a little bit of The Firm. That's what I kept thinking about when I was feeling that. And I thought it was a great update to that type of paranoia. So I really did enjoy it.
I usually say it's kind of like a modern Rear Window.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it.
With hints of the conversation. And there's actually this film called The Lives of Others. It's a foreign film, but it's fantastic. And
Okay.
kind of is an inspiration, and with a hint of Michael Clayton, the conspiracy element.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was picking up there, especially when all right, so the audience knows. So Julia is a writer, and she's kind of stuck at home in this big apartment building, and she has this Alexa type of device that starts listening in on her neighbors, and her husband's boss lives in the building, and he says this one line where he goes, "I'll always be here if you need me." And I'm thinking, oh man, there's some subtext for you, right?
Yeah, I wanted him, the character Henry, it's her husband Noah's boss, to really be the kind of guy who doesn't, later in the series he does kind of lose his temper, but he's the guy who commands a room, who commands a presence, who is so intimidating without needing to show a force of power like some very powerful people are. And David was an amazing actor and voiced that, David Aaron Baker, he voiced that role so perfectly, because just he has that cool chill, makes you just like shiver.
It's so writing something like this obviously is so different, because you're really focusing on audio cues. Did you have to kind of find yourself having to relearn the discipline a little bit?
Totally, yeah. I actually kind of in my mind envisioned it like a play a little bit, because plays,
That
unlike
makes sense.
screenplays,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you see the actors and you see a set, but it's very contained. It's much more dialogue focused.
Right.
And so that's kind of how I formatted it in my mind, because that's a medium I've dealt with before. But there were definitely moments where I was typing and I was like, Julia sees down the hallway, I delete it.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's hard. And actually, even in recording it, there were a few moments where, especially with, so Rachel's character, Julia, she overhears these conversations due to a glitch in her own in her home sound system.
Yeah.
And at first she's just like fascinated, right? But then she starts to hear these snippets that sound a little close to home and have to do with her husband. She hears her husband and her boss, and obviously she uncovers this big conspiracy and is activated. But there are the moments where she's really just kind of observing, and where she's listening, but also kind of observing her apartment building and this little ecosystem and world while all of this is happening. And those were the moments where, while we were recording with Rachel, there were a few times where her and I both were kind of like, oh, maybe we should add another line. You never want to have too much exposition in writing. You don't want to tell people too much, but when you don't have any other senses to work with, sometimes you have to give a little more.
Right.
And then when we added in the sound design, there were actually a few moments I was like, oh, we can take away some of that exposition, because when you hear the footsteps, when you hear from the left side a door open, it actually conveys a lot, and the mind conjures these images in a really cool
It
way.
is crazy how it pulls you in. It was throwing me off because I'm listening and I was like, oh wow, that's so fascinating. He sounds like he's in the shower, like, and you can kind of picture it. It was really cool. And there's a line where Rachel's character is really getting into listening in. And she says, play the neighbors. And I thought that was hilarious because she's trying to trick the thing into working for her. But the way that she reads the line, I mean, the character is so endearing. Like, you just love her right away.
Totally. I mean, she's amazing. I think, you get in her head from the beginning of this series, and it is a bit of a slow burn at the beginning because I wanted everyone to be invested in her, what she's missing in her own life, how this sense of voyeurism, audio voyeurism, makes her feel, connected to these people, makes her realize what she's missing in her own life. And then, stuff gets crazy. But at the beginning, it should really feel like she's someone who's searching for herself, something.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I made her a writer because, well, I'm a writer.
Oh, I know. I was identifying with it when she's sitting there and she's like, all right, just write down anything. Just put a word on the page. Yeah, I was totally feeling it.
Myself all the time when I write. So I was like, well, this helps.
Yeah.
I also think it's a very writer quality. I mean, everyone loves to eavesdrop, I think,
No, I get it.
But I think it's a particularly a writer quality where you really, hone in on what people are saying at the table next to you or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We people watch all the time in my house.
Exactly.
That's funny.
So yeah, she's, and her voice is so soothing and so
it's
emotive.
Breathy. She has a really breathy approach to it, which I thought really makes you just want to listen to what she's saying.
It feels very intimate.
Yeah. It was funny though when she was sitting down and she's writing and I could hear, and I'm like, oh, she's hitting the delete button. I can hear it. So it's so funny. But you did some great subtext where you talk about where she is doing the writing, and she's talking about Pandora's box and being trapped in four walls. And I thought that was great. It was really a lovely addition to showing where she's feeling in this apartment, because there's such a disconnection between her and her husband. So it was just solid stuff. So how did it come about bringing Rachel into the project? Did you have to pitch it to her? What was the process there?
Yeah, so like I said, I originally pitched the project to Automatic and then QCode, and then they were like, great, let's make this. And then they hired me to write the season, well, the pilot and then the whole series. And we finalized that. And then we started the casting process, and they have a great track record of attaching amazing actors to their shows who voice them, but are also producers and also passionate about any derivatives for the work. And so she was just always really one of the people I envisioned for this project.
That's awesome.
They went out to her, QCode and our casting directors, Atomic Honey. And then, her and I and Brian Kavanaugh Jones had a Zoom, and it was funny because she'd only read the pilot. And as you know now, or maybe not, because we're not done with the season yet. We're only about 5 episodes out, but it really got haywire in the last few episodes. And pitching a whole series it's very different than pitching a premise or a pilot or a movie. Even.
Right.
It's a lot of plot. So I kind of verbally took her through the whole season that came after the pilot, and she had great insights on it and seemed to really connect with the character.
That's so cool. That's such a great feeling, man.
And then we're like, let's do it. And then of course, scheduling everybody is a whole other thing. But what's cool about a podcast, because you don't need the set and everything, we were able to pull it together in a very nice organic.
Oh, really? That's great. Because I assume Rachel's the busiest person on the planet.
She's very busy, and somehow she managed to record this while she's filming Maisel.
Wow.
And we had attached her, and then I was shooting my feature Jane in New Mexico, and then I wrapped, and then she was actually shooting a movie in New Mexico. And for a brief moment, we were like, maybe we can meet in New Mexico and do it, but that was not going to work. And then yeah, and then I was in post, and then she was shooting Maisel, so we fit it in and really dedicated the time. They were like set days, but over Zoom recording, which is not the ideal way to do anything over Zoom, but for audio, it's kind of cool because you can actually close your eyes and hear it the way it will sound. And you almost have to, I directed the podcast as well, and you have to remove the way the actors are acting from what you're hearing. And it's a whole other layer.
Oh, wow. I didn't even consider that.
Yeah.
And were they able to act off of each other, or were they just acting off of lines? Like everybody's recording their own thing.
We mostly, due to scheduling issues, like location,
you can't tell it all.
And everyone, we had to mostly record everyone separately. Rachel and Manish, who plays Noah, thankfully we were able to get them together over Zoom. Not
That's the same good.
Phone, but other than that, we had some fantastic readers who read the other lines in the scenes with all the other acters.
The mother and the daughter to me are amazing. Oh my God, they're so cute.
So sweet. The woman who plays the mom, Dana, she just was so excited and had the best energy. And the little girl is so professional, and she really showed up with all her lines. I'm always amazed when kids are just so on top of it.
That's awesome.
But that story is very sweet to me, because the golden bird story she tells was something that my dad used to tell me when I was a kid. That story. So that's my little nice
adorable.
Yeah, everything comes from somewhere.
Are we looking at a season 2, or is this going to be kind of like a mini series?
We're in the process of figuring all that out.
Okay. Is this something that you would want to see transitioning into show or film?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the goal. I think ultimately, like I was saying earlier, you have to create a project for the medium, and this was conceived for a podcast, but I think the characters, the story, the themes will translate very well to a TV show or movie. It's just picking the right medium and reconfiguring it a bit. And everyone involved, I know, is very passionate about making sure it's done in the right way, which is nice.
So I always recommend to writers out there, if they want to try and get an IP going, that a podcast is a really good way to go. You can do it independently, rather cheaply. So, do you have any advice for writers out there that are looking to do something like this?
Yeah, podcast is a great idea. I actually had this other podcast that I co-wrote and directed called Wheel Woman that's coming out. It's out on iHeartRadio right now. They both released last month and are coming out weekly. And that one was a very different process. They don't have the narrative studio system of support that QCode does. But what's great is, now these things are out there in the world that it shows people what they'll be like. A lot of people don't have enough imagination when they read a script of how it will actually get made. And I think when you can hear something and envision it a little bit more, or it feels more tangible, people, and by people I mean, like financiers and studios,
right?
They take it's less of a leap of faith, and
I like it.
I think it makes it easier for people to envision how it can be something else. And then also, there's a lot of ownership. So yes, if you write a feature, let's say, and you sell it, it's you're taking a gamble on how it's going to get made and all that. I think when you already created something, you have more involvement usually, because you've already set the tone, you've already made the project. So I think podcasts are a great way to create IP and to kind of say, look, here's this thing that I can make and I can show you, and it's real. And it just requires people to take less of a chance, so to speak.
I think it's brilliant. I think that's a really great point, Sabrina. You're providing a proof of concept, essentially. And I mean, back in the day, writers would spend a boatload of money to make like a teaser trailer.
Totally.
And then they'd spend thousands on that just to like, hey, this is what it could look like.
Yeah, well, and what's nice about this is you can do it cheaply for sure, but also it's its own finished product. A teaser trailer or something like that, or a true proof of concept, always feels like you're just doing it for a pitch, whereas this also be something people can truly enjoy. And it's very rare, film, TV, these are long processes. It takes a long time to get anything made. And a podcast, while not short, I wrote 8 episodes, it takes some time and all of that, and recording and editing it, but the start to finish is quicker, and the release is easier than the traditional mediums. There's something really wonderful. I mean, most people, I think, who write, who direct, you just want to make things, and being able to do that and put it out in the world is really nice.
Sabrina, congratulations on the show. Do you have, let me rephrase this. Is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't asked you yet?
Well, it's a tough question.
I know, that's why I love it.
I'm not sure if there's anything you should. I would say that, I guess I would say, because a lot of your audience are writers and aspiring
writers, filmmakers. Yep.
Yeah. And what I will say is, so the idea for this podcast was something that I'd kicking around the back of my brain for a really long time, and not as a podcast, because no one had ever said, hey, do you want to make a podcast, or this would be a good idea. But I'd overheard something from my neighbor's apartment once, and it sounded very bad and sounded scary. And it actually turned out it was actors rehearsing for a play. And it got me thinking just about voyeurism and how what we hear is not always what we think.
Right.
What we see is not always what it is. And I'm very invested in the way technology kind of perpetrates these images of people, these ideas, without us really knowing what it is. So I had kind of those themes and ideas kicking around my brain, but wasn't sure the story, right? And I think currently right now I have that with other projects. I have ideas and themes I want to explore, but not the story. And I think it's very easy to give up on those things, or say, well, it's not working and I'm not figuring it out right now. And that's all I would say, is that it's really important to, if you have something that you're invested in figuring out or excited about the idea of, things find their time, and with time you start to think, okay, this could take shape in this way. So I would just, I think just not being too hard on oneself about the exact time, or figuring out, that perfect plot twist right away, and letting things evolve naturally.
Oh, that's beautiful advice. I call it marinating.
Yes.
I gotta let it marinate.
Be like some olives, just sitting in the
just let it sit there for a minute. Oh, it's great. Sabrina, thank you so much. So the show is Listening In, and where can people find it?
You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're releasing weekly.
Awesome.
If you subscribe to QCode, you get a few extra episodes earlier than and I think there's like a bonus interview episode, but overall, no matter what, it's for free, and you can get it once a week. And I think we have 5 episodes now out of 8 out.
Awesome.
So soon you'll be able to binge all of them.
Yeah, well, I have been. I'm in it deep, so... Hey, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter by using my handle @ScreenwriterPod. And if you liked the show, please support it by subscribing and sharing the episode on your social media.